"I'll give you my mansion if you're smarter than me," the millionaire sneered, staring down at me in my maid uniform. 50 wealthy guests laughed. They saw a servant, someone beneath them. But when I stepped forward to accept her challenge, I wasn't just a maid anymore. I was the daughter she threw away 3 years ago, back to destroy everything she stole. And my first answer, it made her face go completely white. Because I didn't just solve her riddle, I revealed the murder she thought she'd hidden forever. My name is Julia Pierce, and 3 years ago I was thrown out of my own father's mansion like yesterday's trash. The woman who did it, my stepmother, Carolyn, a woman so cold, so calculating, that she made ice look warm. She had 2 children of her own. Daniel, her arrogant 25-year-old son who thought the world owed him everything, and Sophia, her 23-year-old daughter who lived her entire life through a phone screen, obsessed with likes and followers. When my father died suddenly, they swooped in like vultures. Within days, I was accused of trying to steal from the family. Within weeks, I was out on the street with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. They took everything. The house, the money, the business, all of it. But here's the thing about being broken. It either destroys you, or it builds you into something stronger. I chose the latter. So yes, I came back. But not as Julia Pierce, the grieving daughter they discarded. I came back as Maya Torres, a quiet, unassuming maid with dyed brown hair, thick glasses, and an accent I practiced for months. When I walked through those familiar doors wearing a brown uniform instead of the designer clothes I grew up in, not a single person recognized me. Carolyn looked right through me when she interviewed me for the position. Daniel barely glanced up from his phone, and Sophia, she just wrinkled her nose like I was beneath her notice. Perfect. For 2 months, I scrubbed their floors, made their beds, and served their meals. I listened to their conversations, learned their secrets, and waited for the right moment. And let me tell you, living as a servant in your own home is a special kind of torture. Every corner held a memory. The library where my father used to read to me. The garden where we planted roses together. The study where he taught me about business and life and honor. But now, these rooms were filled with Carolyn's cold laughter, Daniel's entitled demands, and Sophia's endless selfies. I heard things too. Things that made my blood run cold. One night, while serving dinner, I overheard Carolyn talking to Daniel in hushed tones. "Good thing we got rid of Julia before she found out the truth about her father," she said, swirling wine in her glass. Daniel nodded, that smug smile on his face. She was always too smart for her own good. Better she's gone. What truth? What were they hiding about my father's death? That's when I knew. This wasn't just about reclaiming my inheritance. This was about uncovering whatever darkness they were hiding. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Daniel was getting married next month to some wealthy heiress, and Carolyn decided to throw a pre-wedding celebration. She invited dozens of guests, business associates, society friends, people who mattered in her world. And one evening, during a family dinner a week before the party, she made an announcement that changed everything. To celebrate Daniel's upcoming wedding, she said, raising her glass with theatrical flair, "I'm hosting a special game night. Whoever can solve my 3 challenges will win a very special prize, the full ownership papers to this mansion." The table went silent. Even Daniel and Sophia looked shocked. Our guests exchanged confused glances. Who in their right mind would gamble away a multi-million-dollar property? But then I saw it, the tiny smirk Carolyn gave her children when she thought no one was looking. And I heard what she whispered to them later, when I was clearing the dessert plates. "Don't worry, darlings. No one can solve them. It's just for show. The guests will be impressed by our generosity and will look magnanimous. The house stays ours." It was all a performance, a cruel game designed to make her look generous while risking nothing. But Carolyn had made one critical mistake. She didn't know that Maya Torres, her quiet little maid, was actually the daughter she'd cast out. The daughter who knew this house's secrets better than anyone. The daughter who had been planning, preparing, and waiting for exactly this moment. Game night arrived with all the elegance and extravagance Carolyn could muster. The mansion glowed with crystal chandeliers and candlelight. Guests in expensive suits and designer gowns filled the grand hall, champagne flutes in hand, ready to be entertained. I moved among them in my brown uniform, invisible as always, carrying trays and refilling glasses. But inside, my heart was pounding like a war drum. Carolyn stood at the front of the room, radiant in her red dress, soaking in the attention. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we play a game of wit and wisdom. 3 challenges. The winner receives this. She held up an envelope. The deed to Pierce Mansion. Who's brave enough to participate? A few guests chuckled nervously. Daniel leaned back in his chair, confident. Sophia filmed everything on her phone, probably planning her next viral post. Others whispered among themselves, but no one stepped forward. It was too risky, too absurd. I took a breath. This was it. I raised my hand. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me, the maid in the corner, the one nobody noticed. Carolyn's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, laughing that cold, musical laugh of hers. Maya? Our maid wants to play? How delightfully entertaining. The guest tittered. Daniel actually threw his head back and laughed. This is going to be hilarious, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. But I didn't flinch. I walked to the center of the room, stood straight, and met Carolyn's eyes. Yes, ma'am. I'd like to participate. Carolyn's eyes narrowed, just slightly. Something flickered there, suspicion maybe, or concern. But she couldn't back down now, not in front of all these people. Very well, she said smoothly. Let's see what our Maya is made of. First challenge. I will ask you 10 questions about this family's history. You have 5 minutes. Answer all 10 correctly, and you advance. She began with easy questions. When the mansion was built, what business my father founded, basic facts anyone could Google. But then she got specific, personal. Details only family would know. She was testing me, trying to expose me as a fraud. But here's what Carolyn didn't understand. I didn't just know this family's history. I lived it. I breathed it. Every birthday party, every holiday, every small moment my father cherished. I remembered them all. What was Jonathan Pierce's favorite book? She asked, a slight smile on her lips. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, I answered without hesitation. He kept a first edition in his study and read it every year on his birthday. Carolyn's smile tightened. What was the name of his first pet? Duke, a golden retriever he got when he was 7 years old. What song did he dance to at his wedding? I paused, letting the memory wash over me. At Last, by Etta James, but that was his first wedding. At his second wedding to you, it was Unforgettable, by Nat King Cole. The room went very quiet. Carolyn's face had lost some of its color. Daniel sat up straighter, no longer laughing. Even Sophia had stopped filming. How do you know all this? Carolyn stammered, her composure cracking. I kept my voice steady, my expression neutral. I'm very thorough, ma'am. I believe in knowing the family I work for. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. She must have cheated somehow. She's been snooping through our things. But the guests were murmuring now, intrigued. Some were even smiling, enjoying the unexpected drama. Carolyn had no choice but to continue. During the break before the second challenge, something happened that I hadn't planned for. Sophia, in her careless way, knocked over a photo frame on the mantelpiece while trying to get the perfect angle for a selfie. The frame fell, and as it hit the floor, an old photograph slipped out from behind the visible one. I was closer than anyone else, so I bent to pick it up. And what I saw made my heart stop. It was my father. Young, maybe in his late 20s, standing with a woman I'd never seen before. She was beautiful, with dark hair and kind eyes. and she was holding a baby. Just one baby. My father's arm was around her, his smile genuine and full of love. But my father had been married 3 times. First to a woman who supposedly died in childbirth, a tragedy he rarely spoke about. Then to my mother, who passed away when I was 10. And finally to Carolyn. This photograph, this was from his first marriage, to the woman who died. Except she was very much alive in this picture, holding a baby. My mind raced. If there was a baby, and if that wife supposedly died in childbirth, then what happened to the child? I slipped the photo into my uniform pocket before anyone else could see it, but when I looked up, Carolyn was watching me from across the room. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. She'd seen my reaction. The second challenge began with a new tension in the air. Carolyn's voice was harder now, her smile forced. This challenge is more complex. I want you to explain our family's business model. How did the Pierce family build its wealth? What is the foundation of our success? Daniel jumped in immediately, eager to show off. Easy. Real estate investments. My father, my stepfather, was brilliant at identifying undervalued properties and flipping them for profit. That's how we built this empire. He sat back, confident. Several guests nodded, impressed by his answer. But it was wrong, and I knew it. I stepped forward, my voice clear and steady. That's incorrect. While the family did invest in real estate, that wasn't the foundation of the wealth. The real fortune came from pharmaceutical patents, specifically a heart medication called Cardio-Zen, developed 25 years ago. The patent was registered under Dr. Jonathan Pierce's name, a medication that's still used in hospitals worldwide. The royalties from that single patent generated millions annually. The room went completely silent. Carolyn stood frozen, her face pale as marble. "How could you possibly know that?" she whispered. I met her eyes directly. "Because I did my research. Because I wanted to understand the family I serve. And because..." I paused, letting the moment build. "Because it's the truth." Daniel was on his feet now, his face red. "Who the hell are you?" I reached up slowly and removed my glasses. Then I pulled the pins from my hair, letting it fall to its natural length and color. I straightened my posture, lifted my chin, and let them see me, really see me, for the first time in 3 years. "Hello, Carolyn," I said, my voice no longer carrying that false accent. "Did you miss me?" The recognition hit her like a physical blow. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Julia." No, that's impossible." Sophia gasped. "Oh my God." Daniel's face went through several emotions, shock, fear, anger, before settling on rage. You were here the whole time, spying on us." "Not spying," I said calmly, "observing, learning, waiting for the right moment, and gathering evidence." The guests were in an uproar now, phones out, some recording, others whispering frantically. This was better than any reality show they'd ever watched. Carolyn tried to regain control. This is absurd. You have no right to be here. I'll call the police." "Go ahead," I said, "but first, let's talk about my father's death. You remember, don't you? How he supposedly died of a sudden heart attack 3 years ago. Age 58, healthy as could be one day, dead the next. Tragic, everyone said. Unexpected." "It was a heart attack," Carolyn insisted, but her voice wavered. "No," I said quietly. "It was murder." The word hung in the air like smoke. Several guests gasped. Sophia started crying. Daniel's face went from red to white in seconds. I pulled out a folder from my uniform pocket. I'd been carrying it all night, waiting for this moment. I had my father's body exhumed 2 months ago. The toxicology report came back last week. I held up the papers. Arsenic poisoning, administered over a period of approximately 6 months, causing a slow deterioration that mimicked heart disease. By the time he collapsed, his organs were already shutting down. It was methodical, calculated, Murder. Carolyn's legs seemed to give out. She sank into a chair, shaking her head. No, that's not... We didn't... We? I pounced on the word. Who is we, Carolyn? The room erupted. Someone had already called the police. I could hear sirens in the distance. But I wasn't done. There was still one more truth to uncover. Daniel was backing toward the door, his face a mask of panic. And that's when I knew. It was you, I said, staring at him. You poisoned him. No, Daniel shouted. No, I didn't. I wouldn't. But his mother made a critical mistake. She leaped to his defense in exactly the wrong way. He didn't mean to kill him, she screamed. I just told him to make Jonathan sick. Just weak enough that we could take control of the business. But he gave him too much. He didn't know it would. He was just supposed to be ill, not... She clapped her hand over her mouth, realizing what she'd just confessed. But it was too late. A dozen phones had recorded every word. Daniel crumbled. He literally fell to his knees, sobbing. I didn't want him to die, he wept. Mother said if he was just sick for a while, we could manage everything. I thought he'd get better after we had control. I didn't know I was killing him. I swear I didn't know. My hands shook as I looked at him. This pathetic man who'd murdered my father out of greed and stupidity. You poisoned him for 6 months, I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. You watched him get weaker, sicker, in pain. And you never stopped. Not once. The police burst through the doors then, and chaos erupted. Officers separated Daniel and Carolyn from the crowd, reading them their rights. Guests were giving statements. Phones were still recording, and Sophia stood in the corner, crying hysterically, claiming she knew nothing. But I wasn't finished. There was still one more secret to uncover. I pulled out the old photograph I'd found. Before you take them away, I said to the officers, I need one more answer. I held up the photo to Carolyn. Who is this woman? And what happened to her baby? Carolyn's face crumpled. All the fight went out of her. That's Catherine, Jonathan's first wife. The one who supposedly died in childbirth. Tears were streaming down Carolyn's face now. She didn't die. I was Jonathan's nurse when Catherine went into labor. There were complications. She had twins, 2 baby girls, but Catherine was hemorrhaging, and Jonathan was out of the country on business. The doctors said she might not make it. I saw an opportunity. My blood ran cold. What did you do? I told Jonathan that Catherine died and one of the babies died with her. I forged documents. I arranged for Catherine to be moved to a long-term care facility under a different name, told her that Jonathan didn't want her anymore, that he'd abandoned her, and I gave one of the babies to an orphanage. The room spun. I could barely breathe. Twins? I kept you, Carolyn whispered. I let Jonathan raise you as his daughter from his second marriage to your mother, who I claimed was his second wife. But really, Catherine was alive the whole time. And your twin sister, I gave her away. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. I had a twin sister. My father had been lied to his entire life. Catherine, my real mother, was alive. A voice came from the back of the room. Actually, that part's not quite accurate. Everyone turned. A young woman stepped forward from among the guests, removing a dark wig and colored contacts. She looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same face, same build. My mirror image. My name is Elena Pierce, she said, her voice trembling but strong. Catherine Pierce is our mother, and I've spent 23 years searching for my family. I stared at her, this stranger who wore my face. How did you find me? Elena smiled through her tears. DNA testing. 6 months ago, we matched. I've been investigating ever since. And when you contacted me with your plan to expose Carolyn and Daniel, I knew I had to help. So I've been here tonight, watching, recording everything, making sure we had evidence. We moved toward each other as if pulled by invisible strings. When we embraced, it felt like finding a missing piece of myself I didn't know was lost. We were strangers, but we were family. We were sisters. The police took Carolyn and Daniel away. The mansion emptied of guests, most of them still in shock, clutching their phones and their stories. Sophia remained, sitting on the stairs, devastated but finally understanding the depth of her family's sins. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, Julia, I didn't know about any of it. The murder, the lies about your mother. I thought you were just some spoiled girl who tried to steal from us. I'm so sorry." I studied her for a long moment, and I realized something. Sophia had been raised by a monster. She'd been taught to be shallow and cruel, but she wasn't evil. She was just lost. "I believe you," I said finally, "and I forgive you." It took months to sort everything out legally. Daniel was sentenced to 25 years for second-degree murder. Carolyn received 15 years for conspiracy and fraud. The mansion, the business, everything, it all came back to me. But more importantly, it revealed that my father's original will had been hidden by Carolyn. In it, he left everything to my daughters, plural. He somehow knew, or hoped, or sensed that both his daughters were alive somewhere. Elena and I became co-owners of everything. But we didn't want to live in that mansion, with all its dark memories and painful secrets. Instead, we converted part of it into a home for separated families. Children searching for parents, siblings torn apart, families broken by lies and cruelty. We called it Pierce Family Hope Center, in honor of our father. We found Catherine, our real mother, in a care facility upstate. She'd been there for 25 years, believing she'd been abandoned, that her babies were dead. When we walked into her room and she saw us, both of us, she collapsed in our arms, sobbing. She touched our faces like she couldn't believe we were real. "My girls," she kept saying, "my beautiful girls." We're still healing, all of us. Catherine is recovering, slowly regaining strength and rebuilding her life. Elena and I are learning to be sisters, sharing stories, filling in the gaps of our separate lives. And Sophia, she visits sometimes. She's changed, softer now, working at the Hope Center and trying to make amends for the family she came from. As for me, I learned something important through all of this. Intelligence isn't about solving riddles or winning games. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. Real intelligence is patience, strategy, knowing when to hide and when to reveal yourself. It's about never giving up on the truth, no matter how long it takes to uncover it. My stepmother thought she could erase me from my own family's story. She thought that by taking away my name, my home, and my inheritance, she could make me disappear. But she forgot one crucial thing. You can take away everything a person has, but you can't take away who they are. And who I am is my father's daughter, stubborn, determined, and unwilling to let injustice stand. I came back to that mansion as a maid because I had to, but I left it as myself, Julia Pierce, daughter of Jonathan and Catherine, sister to Elena, an inheritor of a legacy built on truth instead of lies. And that, more than any mansion or money, is worth everything. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share it, and let me know in the comments. Would you have had the courage to go back and face your past like Julia did? And remember, sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. See you in the next story, and trust me, it's even more unbelievable than this one.